There we are. Hello, everyone. Welcome. I am Briar Harvey. This is the Neurodiversity Media Network, and we are here today for the first show of 2024, the
Woohoo!
Neurospicy Guide to Dating with the fabulous Mother Claus, everyone.
Hey, y'all.
So
Here
I'm
we
really
are again.
excited about this episode. The conversation. So if you haven't seen any of the previous episodes, I will link them in show notes. We have talked about getting to understand your brain, your resources, how you communicate. Now we're going to actually have to talk to other people. It's frightening.
Right. Like you've decided you're going to date.
Mm.
You've realized that, you've probably had some challenges. We have probably had some challenges, not you, Briar, but the rest of us have had some challenges with, dating and relationships in our lives. You have decided to step out there and like you've checked out, you're like, I have this amount of time to devote to this, I have this amount of emotional resources. You have updated your profiles, or maybe you haven't and you need to catch up on all of this. But today we're talking about making big and small talk. We are sending that first message if you're online. And if you're offline, if you're going out to meetup groups and that sort of thing, then we're talking about what goes into that first conversation when you approach somebody. And then how do you, like, if you're successful, how do you stretch that conversation out? Like, what is a good way to get to know people and get on to that dating path? So that's what we're talking about today.
I'm very excited about it because I don't do small talk. I'm literally allergic. So
Yeah. Yeah.
all of this, truly, I would be, if I were not married, I would definitely be a single lady with a lot of cats. 100%.
Yeah. Yeah. I I thought about that for a while, for sure. After a string of relationships was that had taken up 20 years of my life, two relationships specifically that took up about 20 years of my life. Um, yeah, I seriously thought about it. And but the second relationship was so much better than the first one that I was like, well, you know what? I'm heading in the right direction.
We've learned some things.
I've learned a
We're
few things.
improving.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, the fun thing was between relationship one, which is about 15 years, and relationship two, which was about 4.5 years, um, I also spent a lot of time going out on first dates. It was the mid 2000s. It was the heyday of online dating, right? Like Match.com, Yahoo Personals was still a thing back
Oh,
then. Like
wow.
this was like everybody was like, what's this new thing? You met somebody on a dating site? That's so weird, right? And I jumped in to the deep end with both feet. And during this 1 year period, I said yes to every single person who asked me on a date that didn't creep me out. I ended up on 127 first dates during that year. I learned a lot about conversation skills. I know, I'm seeing your face. I learned a lot about like getting to that first date. I learned a lot about being on that first date. And you know what I learned a lot more of? What I don't want in a partner.
Hey, that's absolutely the most valuable information you can have, though, right?
So valuable. And I also learned to see patterns, right? So from these first dates, I went backwards and said, oh, that's the point where I've seen this pattern start over and over and over again. So I begin to realize that people who do this, like Amazon, right? People who buy this also like this. And it's scary, like how like they can target you. It's
Right.
like that. People who say this phrase also do this, right? Like, so today we're talking about how to start your messages, your communication with somebody, that first contact, off on the most potentially successful footing. That's all I can promise, right? Like, because there is no magic button that you can push
No.
or magic series of buttons that is going to make every single person respond to you, no matter how badly you want to hear from them. But what I can do is I can say, this is what you are going to include in a good first message. This is what you want to include in a good conversation. And then from there, it's a bit of a crapshoot. Sometimes you're going to send things to people online and they're not even going to be online for the last 3 months, right? So most likely to succeed is the key here.
All right. So let's get into it. Where do we start?
Well, probably first messages. And the reason I say first messages is because online, you're going to send that first message, and that's going to be somebody's like introduction to you. They're not going to see, your body language. They're not going to hear your tone of voice. If you're lucky, they'll see at least one picture of you. So hopefully it's a quirky one. And we did talk about, what pictures are good in, the past profile one. But they're not going to see you, right? At best, they're going to see a two-dimensional version of you. Hi, Cobalt. So that's important, right? So the first message is going to be you saying hello and all of these like little tiny things that are important for somebody to really make a decision. So, 5 things. Introduction. You want to introduce yourself. You would be surprised at how many people will send me paragraphs and paragraphs of text and never actually say, "Hi, my name is."
So are we talking like when you say introduce yourself, I think business terms, right? What's my elevator pitch? Are you saying I should have a personal elevator pitch?
I think you should at least be ready to say, "Hello, I'm Heather," right? Especially on the sites that you use a username instead of your real name, right? Because, droid for you too. Like, what am I going to call you? Right? Give me something, right? An introduction. And that's what a first message is supposed to be, is an introduction to you and why I should give a shit about who you are as a person, right? So, introduction. Interest. You want to actually show interest. And the way you show interest in a first message is saying something like, hey, I, saw something on your profile that really interested me. Or, hey, it looks like, is that Joshua Tree? I've been there. It's such a magical place, right? Something like that. Showing an interest in them. And the way to do that is in small details. And I'm going to give you some examples here. I'm just starting off. Respect.
Woof.
I am so sorry that I have to say this. But come on, y'all. Be considerate of the person you're writing to. Understand everyone is different. I mean, this is why we're here, right? Everyone is different. And your kinks or interests or like peccadillos are not their kinks or interests or peccadillos. So be aware of that, right? And also be aware and be clear that you know that the person that you're writing to is not online 24/7 specifically to respond to your message. Now, I know that as soon as you send that off, the anxiety meter starts, boiling and it sounds like an old time pressure cooker, right? And you want to do something. And oftentimes, what ends up happening in those somethings is somebody sends a second message and a third message and a fourth message. And then they get really embarrassed and angry at themselves. And then they say something like, well, I guess you didn't like me anyway, and block. Don't do that.
Never seen those Reddit threads or anything.
No. I'm sure you have not. It's really fun when they actually call you a pustulant, see you next Tuesday, just because you didn't respond quickly enough or, whatever. Fourth, potential connection. Mention something that connects you, right? Even if it's something small. Oh my goodness, do you have a tuxedo cat? I had a tuxedo cat when I was a kid. That was so wonderful. And then they can say, no, it's my sister. You can be like, oh, that's so cute though. You've got something to talk about there. And then an invitation. So Briar, you were talking about business, your elevator pitch. The invitation is ABC, always be closing. Give them an invitation to engage with you, to either continue speaking with you, to take them out on a date, whatever. Right? Now,
it's a sales process. You're selling yourself.
Yes. In the last episode, we wrote our advertisements, right? And the key is because when people hear a sales process and you're selling yourself, they're like, I don't want to sell myself. Like, they should love me for who I am. Yes, they should. The right people will love you for exactly who you are. And
they still have to meet you first.
They still have to meet you. You don't know that you need XYZ widget until they market to you, right? And then all of a sudden, how have I lived without, I've got this little garlic thing. It's like a little, it's shaped like an oval and it's got a handle on one side and the other side is flat and it's just got all these little holes in it and you just roll it over a piece of garlic. And you don't have to chop or anything. Like for people
who that's amazing.
Garlic, like it's just like zoop, and you would do that like a couple of times and then scrape it off and then a couple more times and you're done. I did not know this even existed. My life was not lacking a garlic rocker. That's what I'm going to call it because I don't know what it's actually called. Until I saw it, probably on a Facebook ad because those things always get me. And I was like, ooh. Right? This is what we want, right? We're selling ourselves and we're selling ourselves to the right people. So we're not selling a garlic rocker as, the finest Japanese steel knife, because that's not what it is. It's a garlic rocker. We're selling ourselves as exactly who we are. So Cobalt says, how do you curb nervous rambling? Follow the template. It's that simple. Follow the template. No more, no less. So examples. Good morning, and then use their name or their username, right? So in my case, good morning, Heather, right? Or on some sites, good morning, Nookie. Do not use, hey, babe. Good morning, sweetie. Hello, handsome. And the reason for that is because you don't want to artificially inflate your intimacy in the first message, right? If you connect over time, you can start telling them, like that they're your sweetie or your, as the French say, my little cabbage or, whatever. But to start off, use their name, right? They have a name. They have a username. It's right there. So the use of a name shows respect in specificity and in not assuming either a title or an intimacy
You
that
had
doesn't
to
yet
write
exist.
this message for you. I had to
Mhm.
take the time to type your name
Yes,
out, not
that too.
paste in a form message.
Yes.
Hey, babe.
Hey,
How many
babe,
times you copied that from your notes app?
WYD, right? Yeah, exactly. So then I was proving. I was just thinking about Peru. Hmm. I was perusing your profile and I find you fascinating and frankly amazingly attractive. I was particularly interested in your statement about flamingo riding and racing since I've had an interest in that area for years and I've always wanted to learn more. What got you into that? So, the fascinating and amazingly attractive, those are indicators of romantic interest. And flamingo racing, there's your potential connection. What got you into that is an invitation to
Mhm.
continue the conversation, right? So, in those few lines, we got in 3 different segments. Oh, and pardon my enthusiasm. I'm username or preferred name, and I'm ever so happy to make your acquaintance. There's your introduction, right? Is there a name besides name or username that you prefer? So, for example, if I'm on a site where somebody's calling me Heather and they say, is there a name besides Heather that you prefer? I would say, my friends call me Nookie or Heather, so you can use whichever you choose, right? That's nice. As opposed to people coming at me saying, hey, beautiful, how you doing? And I have to say, hey, it's lovely to meet you. And we're not in a relationship. So I would prefer that you call me Heather until we get to a point where our intimacy warrants pet names.
And you have to set that boundary almost immediately,
Oh,
which makes them not friend material anymore, I notice. Please call me Heather. You're not a friend yet. You can't even get my friend name.
absolutely. Absolutely. Because if they're going to start pushing for beautiful intimacy, then I'm going to set them gently back away from, hey, this is a friendly stranger intimacy to this is a stranger I'm not sure of intimacy or lack thereof, as the case may be. Right. And here's the thing, as neurospicy people, we have a tendency to allow people to stomp on our boundaries a lot,
Mhm.
right? Because we want to be accepted. We want to be liked. We want to be loved. We want to create those connections. And doing so makes us more vulnerable to the people out there who make pushing boundaries like a full-time hobby. So I have this system that I use in my head that I've taught to a few people when it comes to dating. It's called start with no. Set your boundaries. If they come in calling you something you are unwilling to be called, stop them. Because either they will honor your boundaries and say, "Ooh, sorry, didn't mean it. Lovely to meet you, Briar." Or they will not. And all of those responses will tell you everything you need to know.
Right.
Um, so you've given them respect by asking them about a name, treating them as a valuable human with a right to be unique, right? And then you say, have a fantastic day, sign your name or username, right? Super easy. And that's the kind of template that you can use over and over and over again. We've actually created a template for anyone to download. It'll be in the show notes. We'll pop it into the chat. It has this template inside of it. Greeting of some kind, username. I was perusing your profile and I indicate interest without sexual overtones. I was particularly interested in what caught your interest. Give a reason, ask a question about it, or start a conversation for them to respond to. Introduce yourself. Is there a name besides username you prefer? Have a fantabulous day, your username or preferred name signature. Now, here's the thing. What you're going to want is you're going to want to look at that template and put it in your language, right? Most people are not going to say, I was perusing your profile. But, some dude with a fedora on a dating site is going to be all like, mid-century Victorian and be like, hello, beautiful woman. I was perusing your profile and right? So
Yes.
now I would probably say, hey, your picture caught my eye and I took a look at your profile and I loved where you mentioned Thailand. I was just there in 2018 and I loved Bangkok. It looks like you got out of the cities though. Where did you go? I would love to know more, right? Oh, and by the way, my name is Heather. It's lovely to meet you, John, because John's name is right there. And is there another name you'd prefer to be called? Right? Like something super simple. And then I'd put my, sort of trademark asterisk smiles asterisks because I'm old, y'all. And I started way back in the days of like CompuServe and Prodigy and
it always makes me
AOL.
smile when I get a smile from you.
Whenever I'm smiling, I automatically type that in because, I didn't emoji back in the day. You young kids with all your emojis, you think you can just emoji all over the place? Smiles with asterisks were good enough for us back in the day. Or those ones where they'd be like, asterisk kneels at your feet and worships you, asterisk. And you'd be like, get out of here. Go. So, yeah. So that template is absolutely available to you. And, Cobalt, if you follow that template and you include those specific things, you're not going to be nervous rambling because you're going to have exactly what you need in there to get the point across and make the connection. Now, one thing I do want to point out is I did mention in the template, it says indicate interest without sexual overtones. So let me just say this. In a first message, don't include sexual content via words or photos. Just don't do it. And this is specifically true even on those types of sites. Like seriously, treat somebody like a human and connect with them as human first. And let them either initiate or consent to that kind of interaction. It's really, really important. Okay, Cobalt was talking more during in person. We will get to that. So there's a few more in the download that I put up there about how to and how not to do that first message. But here's the thing. That template, this is for you, Cobalt, can be used for in-person meeting as well. Because an ideal first conversation will include those 5 elements, right? An introduction, a statement of interest, respect for who they are as people, a potential connection, and an invitation, right? So, hey, Briar, I couldn't help but notice your astounding piggyback skills. It's one of my favorite sports. What got you into competing? Right? And then Briar, suitably flattered that I noticed her outstanding piggyback
absolutely.
skills.
No one has ever asked me about my piggyback skills before, actually. Let me
So
tell you.
exactly. So, it is so wonderful to talk to somebody who has taken an interest that I have into such a skilled level and is competing in that. Like, this is super exciting. And I am so glad that I've gotten the chance to see this. By the way, I'm Heather. I'm enjoying this conversation. You're fun to talk to. Right? So then we've got that introduction and a statement of interest. Right?
I don't think anybody will ever be disappointed to hear that they're fun to talk to.
Especially if it's true.
Hmm.
Right? Like, if your body language, because we're talking in person now, if your body language and your tone of voice is engaged with them and you say, I'm really enjoying talking with you. And Briar, you're like, oh, hey, Heather, I'm Briar. It's lovely to meet you. Right? Like, so you say, Briar, it is lovely to meet you as well, Briar. I didn't mean to take up your time. I was just so enthusiastic about seeing, a professional piggybacker. That was like, I mean, like top tier, made my day experience, right? And then I'd love to talk more and get to know you better. Would you be open to, meeting for coffee or tea sometimes? There you go. There's your invitation. You are saying how, happy you are to meet them. You're saying that you don't want to take up a lot more of their time, and you are offering to connect, right? And this cuts back on the nervous rambling, at least in that first conversation, because you are getting in, you are leaving a positive impression as much as possible, and then you are removing yourself, unless they beg you to stay, which is entirely possible. You are removing yourself with an invitation to connect later. If they take you up on that, great. If they don't, because the idea of an invitation also means the idea of rejection.
Yes.
Right? As exciting as it might be to get a yes, you also might get a no. And that just the thought of it, nervousness, anxiety, terror, right? Especially for those who have rejection sensitivity dysphoria, right? Whether you've been diagnosed or not, hardly anyone is like, hell yeah, rejection. I mean, I used to hate it. Like, hate it. Hate it, hate it, hate it, hate it, hate it. But I have learned to welcome rejection. And the reason I now welcome it is because now I won't be wasting my time with anybody who doesn't feel like they're a fit for me. And I would rather get that out of the way. I would rather that no thank you, but it has been a pleasure to meet you, versus that, oh, sure. And then it doesn't happen. And then it doesn't happen. And then it doesn't happen. And it doesn't happen. Right? I like direct. So much easier. However, if you're concerned about getting rejected, you can make the invitation less forward. So let's say you meet in a meetup group. You will potentially see them in again. You can just say, hey, it has been such a pleasure to meet you. I hope that we get a chance to talk again. Right? That's an invitation. They may chase you down for it. They may find you on Facebook. They may do this, that, or the other thing. And you may just see them again next time. Or you may not. And here's the thing. That's okay. Right? You met them once. You have the opportunity to meet them again. If you don't, or if they're not interested, here's the thing. I'm 50. If I meet somebody today, I have lived 50 years of my life without knowing them. And if I don't know them 5 minutes from now, my life is not going to be significantly changed. Right? You're not going to get any worse from this unless you choose to. Right? You could dwell over, Dream Boopsie 702, not like wanting to get to know you. Sure. I mean, if that's how you want to spend your time, don't let me stop you. But you could also say, okay, I had a thing for Dream Boopsie 702. I still do. And Dream Boopsie 702, not a fit for me. I feel pretty much the same way about Jason Momoa, right? Like, very pretty to look at. Probably not a good fit for my lifestyle. Like, considering that we've never come together, despite the many missives I've written him, I'm thinking it's not meant to be. So I will just, I'll put that aside. I will pull it out whenever I get a chance and, sort of like, it's sort of like buying a lottery ticket. Buying a lottery ticket, you don't buy it because you think you're going to win the lottery. You buy it because that hour or two that you spend dreaming about winning the lottery is worth the $2 you spend, right? That's really what it's all come down to. And it's the same thing, right? There are a lot of people. If you are an interesting and interested person, there are going to be a lot of people that you are going to crush on that are not going to crush on you. And if you're an interesting and interested person, there are going to be people who are going to crush on you that you don't have that interest in. Like, it's just the way it is. And, one of my clients who I've been working with for a little while, when they originally came to me, they were in their 40s and they were a virgin, never had a relationship of any sort. And then they're like, well, what do I do? This person likes me more than I like them. And I'm like, well, look at you. Right? You went from, I don't know if I can do this, to, how do I let this person down as kindly as possible? And I'm like, that is why you're my client, because you actually care about being as kind as possible. You are an amazing human that somebody is going to be very lucky to have in their lives. And you may not know all of the people who crush on you, and that's okay. Here's the thing, though. Even if you get rejected, you have learned. Whatever you've learned there, you've learned that person's not a fit. You have learned maybe a pattern about that person that you can then apply to another person. Oh, this person was kind of this, this, and this. The last 3 people who were also this, this, and this were not a good fit for me. Maybe that's a pattern. I'm going to keep an eye on it. And you have learned how to be rejected, which honestly is an amazing life skill. Not just interpersonally, but Briar, business, right?
Right.
Get rejected.
People will say no to you. They will not buy your stuff. It's the same as them not dating you.
And over and over and over and over. Get used to it, right? Fail forward. Enjoy learning every step of the way.
Okay. So we've had this initial conversation, and let's say they accept our bid.
Yes. Okay. So now we're going to have that first one. That's kind of like our small talk, right? You don't have to talk about the weather. You don't have to talk about, the political climate or anything like that. You have your 5 key points to make. That's your small talk. That's your bid. That's showing your interest. Okay, now you've got a date or you're chit-chatting for a while online. Where do you go from here? Okay. Questions. I like to start off with questions because questions can be done really, really well or really, really poorly. I had somebody reach out to me. First message, And this is on like a kinky site, right? So first message on a kinky site, and all they said, not even a subject line. What's your favorite bird? This
I don't
is
know how to
how
respond to
not
that.
to answer a how not to ask a question in dating, right? I wrote back. I did respond. I said, I'm sorry, I don't think in favorites or absolutes. There is literally zero way I could come up with a favorite bird. I don't have a favorite bird. I could make something up. I could be like the passenger pigeon, right? The dodo. But I really wanted to like, and you know what they responded with? Yeah, I don't either. I don't even have a favorite bird. Like, what the fudge?
Why use that as your opener then? Oh my goodness.
So, questions for the sake of questions, not a good idea. Also, I've been in those conversations where somebody like writes to me and they like, hey, my name is John. Your profile seemed really interesting. And question. I'd be like, hey, John, nice to meet you. Answer. And John would be like, yeah, nice to meet you too. Question. Like, okay. Answer. Question. Like, okay. Am I being interrogated here? Or are you trying to get in my pants? I can't tell. Are you CIA? What's going on? Like, I don't know. Right? Don't do that. Right? Don't just fire question after question after question again. Because it gets exhausting. Like, somebody asks a question and I respond with a thoughtful answer, and then all they've got is another question. They don't respond to my answer. They don't share their own answer, right? Like, all they've got is another question. Eventually, I'm going to get sick of carrying the conversation. And I'm going to wonder why they're such a creep, right? Yes, I know they're probably trying to get to know me or whatever, but yikes on a bike. Right? So
There's no interaction.
no. So make your questions interesting. Now, Cobalt says, I would have found that to be an intriguing opener. Sure. If somebody had introduced themselves, said, hey, my name is Jonah. I came across your profile. I thought you sounded really fun. And you said, ask you anything. So I'm going to ask, what's your favorite bird? But nothing else. Just out of the blue, what's your favorite bird? I've got nothing about birds on my profile. So he could literally copy and paste that question to thousands of people just fishing for a response. And then when he got a response, he didn't really know what to do with it. Right? Oh, yeah, I don't have a favorite bird either. Okay, where were you going to go with that conversation? Right? So make your questions interesting. Like, don't just ask about what somebody does for a living, right? You're probably going to see that in their profile and you'll get to know it eventually. But try things like, I see you love skiing. Are you more often found in the Black Diamond or the Bunny Slopes? Right? Or what, I was noticing that you have a lot of outdoor pictures. What are you most likely to do when you find out you have an unexpected day all to yourself? What's your guilty pleasure? I see that you like to cook. What's your guilty pleasure? How about I consider myself a goofball with a romantic streak a mile wide. How would you describe yourself? I have 2 dogs. Are you a dog person, a cat person, or do you prefer wombats? Lately, I've been
I
seeing
like
wombats.
that.
Yeah,
I
I've been
like wombats. Yes.
seeing wombats all over my Facebook feed, especially these little rescued babies. They're like, hop, hop, hop. So freaking cute. Oh my Lord. Okay, so make your questions interesting. Then answer your own damn questions. Like, seriously, if you ask me a question, what are you most likely to do when you find you have an unexpected day off? They say, well, I mean, you notice in my pictures that I'm spending a lot of time outside. I would probably get out for a hike. If I knew the day before, I might get up early and, head to such and so park 2 hours away from me in order to really spend some time. And then you respond, and you say, that sounds really interesting. I've never been to such and so. In fact, I've never been hiking before. I do enjoy walking though. So I imagine hiking in the woods would be interesting. What do you love about it? Right? You're engaging with the information that they've given you. Do you know what that is? That's interest and that's respect. Right? You're continuing the process. Giving them your answer means that you're not forcing them to carry the conversation constantly. Right? So, ideally, words are hard for me today.
It's a whole new year.
It is a whole new year. It is a whole new year. So ideally, like if you're online, ask a question, get a response, comment on the response, right? Like keep the conversation going. Answer the question yourself before you ask another question. Or alternatively, you can switch that around and you can ask a question with your answer included. Like, I have 2 dogs, right? Are you a dog person, a cat person, or do you prefer wombats? It starts off with 2 dogs. So if they say, I'm a cat person, then you can say, oh, I've had cats before. What do you love about cats? How many cats do you have? Yada, 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 right? And by the way, the reason I included the wombats thing is because I have been seriously considering a baby wombat. They're so freaking cute. I just want to squish them all up. Right? So you ask a question with your own information. You get a response. You comment on the response. Keep the conversation going. Maybe clarify that tidbit of information. Like I just said, I've got dogs now. I've had cats before, and I want to get a baby wombat. Right? And then you ask another question. Do not ask questions that are answered in their profile. Like, it happens so often to me. There is no faster way to show someone that you are not paying attention than to start off asking a question that's right there for you to read. And in person, like we do this a lot, right? Like, you're at an airport and you're like at the ticket counter and they say, have a nice flight. You're like, you too. Oh, right. We do the same thing with questions. When you're nervous, it's easy to use the same questions sort of over and over and over again. And while that's you being in your head, that also makes them feel like you're not interested because you haven't paid attention to what they're saying. They might have already said, like in the answer to a question, that they're a lawyer, and then you go on to ask them what they do for a living. Right? That's a good way. Now, if you do that in person, you can be like, oh, yeah, you just said that. Oops. But I remembered your name, Briar.
I
That's why
won't
I
remember
said it twice
yours.
at the beginning of this conversation. Right? Like you can play it off as long as you realize, what you're doing there. Give more than one of the challenges neurotypical or spicy people do, especially when conversing with neurotypical people, is neurotypical people will ask a question this goes more into the small talk. So, what are your plans this weekend? And a lot of neurospicy people will take that literally and feel like the person is actually asking what their plans are. Like they actually want to know the answer. No, what they are doing is trying to continue the conversation with you. They might also be trying to see if there's a space in that weekend for something interesting. So if you respond with an answer like, not much, that's pretty much what happens. Like they got nowhere to go.
Right.
Not much. Okay. Right. So what about, well, I was planning to take my dog for a blah, blah. I was planning to take my dog for a hike. I wanted to hit the farmer's market for some buffalo steaks to grill and possibly see a movie, maybe the Color Purple remake. I hear it's amazing, but that's all on Saturday. What about you? So you've, in that answer, told your conversation partner that you have a dog, that you're active, that you cook or grill at least, and that you enjoy movies. You also then gave them an opening by asking after their plans, right? The second answer is more likely to continue the conversation than not much.
Right, because that is, after all, what we're here to do. Continue the conversation.
Or end it if we figured out we're not a fit, right? But if we're not there yet, then we want to continue the conversation. And we want this to be a pleasant and fun conversation, right? And what's more pleasant and fun than flirting?
I have no idea. I literally don't understand flirting.
I heard in the ether hundreds of groans. Oh, yeah, Cobalt. Okay. The fine art of flirting. Now, this is going to look different from human to human, of course. Here's what I'm going to say. If the mere thought of flirting doesn't strike fear into your heart, you've probably got a good handle on the idea. The rest of us, the awkward mortals, I've got some tips for you. And all you have to do is remember flirt. F-L-I-R-T. Flirt. F. Some people are going to hate me for this. F is for flattery. Flattery gets a bad rap. A lot of people see flattery as like a manipulative tactic, insincere, yada,
Flattery
yada.
gets you everywhere with me. Tell me how awesome I am, and I will move the earth for you.
Same, as long as I believe it's authentic, right? So for those of you wondering, that is the birdie girl. Yeah. I'm actually a dog person, but here I am with a gray tuxedo kitty taking up space on my lap right now. So let's talk about flattery. Let's talk about flattery. Let's talk about compliments. Because how you compliment people matters, right? Again, writing to somebody and saying, hey, beautiful. It's not good complimenting. So I've actually written like a whole kind of dissertation on how to compliment people well. Actually, you know what, Briar? That could be the giveaway that you can give to your paying people. Okay. I will put that together for you.
Thank
you.
How
to compliment. There you go. So I will offer that in whatever I end up putting together with all of this, but only for my paying clients. So the freebie that we're giving away, that's for everybody. How to compliment, that'll be only for, the insider circle, whatever that ends up looking like. So here's the thing. How to compliment. Don't bother trying to be smooth. Be authentic. Super key, right? Say it when you mean it. So if you see somebody and you're like, oh, say it then, right? Just say it. And again, you're not trying to be smooth, you're trying to be authentic. So, oh my goodness. Yeah. Briar, one of the things I did notice today, and we were all caught up in like, tech stuff and whatever. I'm loving this little peasant neckline thing. Super cute.
Thank
Welcome
you.
2024 and milkmaids. I love it.
Always.
3, if you can, be creative, right? 4, compliment what makes them unique to you. 5, don't just compliment physical appearance.
Yes, please.
So like, yeah, hey, beautiful. Okay, first of all, I don't really consider myself super beautiful. Some people do. I'm cool with that. But the people I only really care about hearing that from are the people I'm involved with, right? The rest of the world, not so much. Second, if I am beautiful, that is a trick of genetics because I almost never wear makeup. Like lipstick, maybe eyelashes, because I'm going through some hormonal shit. They're all falling out. But other than that, it's a trick of nature, right? Doesn't matter. And third, if I am beautiful and I know it and I've got the genetics to prove it, don't you think I hear that often enough from enough people that I don't need to hear it from one more person online, however nicely it's intended?
Yeah, it's off-putting at that point.
Yeah. So also don't add modifiers. And by modifiers, do you know what I mean?
Swifties?
You're beautiful for 50.
Oh no.
Oh, well, you've got great grammar for a man. Right? What am I supposed to respond to that with? Like, or I don't normally like curvy women, but you're gorgeous. My ex-husband, this was a great one. My ex-husband was Black. He was not African American. He was Australian Aborigine. And he wore his hair in dreads. And people would talk to him over the phone quite a bit, older women, when I was teaching sewing and fashion design. And then when they met him in person, they would say, oh, you don't look anything like you sound. You're so well spoken. And you could hear the fill in the blank, right? Don't add modifiers. Bad idea. If you're in an ongoing relationship or you're a little intimate and you can touch, compliment them as you touch them, right? If you're comfortable with touch and they are comfortable with touch, compliment them as they touch them. It adds to the compliment, right? Compliment what doesn't come naturally. So in longer term relationships, in friendships, when somebody's been working on something and you know it, compliment them. If somebody's trying to diet and they haven't lost any weight that you can see, but you can see that they're really being good about sticking to it, say, oh my gosh, you have the most amazing willpower. I am so proud of you, right? Because that just does not come naturally, right? And number 9, figure out what they value about themselves, figure out what they think is important, and compliment that. So I've literally had people like write to me and say, oh my gosh, you're so beautiful. I would love to get to know you. And I write back and I say, why? And they say, you're so beautiful. And I'm like, well, that's not a valid enough reason for me. And that's usually when they go, well, you stuck up biatch, right? But That's not interesting to me. I have on one site over 1,400 writings on kink, non-monogamy, dating, love. I've got a profile that's probably like this long. And all they can say when they're approaching me is they think I'm a hot. Well, that's just not enough for me, right? The key is not to make someone feel better towards you to get something when you compliment them.
Mhm.
Except maybe in this case, a continued conversation. But the goal is to make them feel better about themselves for having spent time with you. So, F is for flattery. L, listening. Flirting with someone is not the same as flirting at someone. Let me say this again. Flirting with someone is not the same as flirting at someone. If they do not respond positively, do not continue. Right? You will get far better results if you listen, if you pay attention to your co conspirator, play off of them instead of like following a script. And for those of you who don't know, I spent some of the early 2000s in the pickup artist community. And so I know how these scripts work. And so do a lot of other women. They've been through this before, right? And so do a lot of men, like oh, I'm sure you say that to all the guys, right? Like, so if you are flirting your best, if you are flattering, if you're listening, if you are showing interest, if you're being responsible, if you're trusting yourself, and they're not giving back as good as they get, it's entirely possible you're hitting just the wrong note and it's time to reassess, right? So listen.
I now understand, though, why people have called me flirty for all these years, and I've never understood it because I like to give compliments and I'm a good listener.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, wait. And then there's I. You show interest,
Mm-hmm.
right? So when you are actually interested in somebody, you make your interest clear. Not just that you are interested, but what your interest is. I'm interested in learning about your hobbies. I'm interested in you. I'm interested in tea. I'm interested in this. Hey, would you like to get together for lunch and talk about some business stuff? Right? Interested. Show your interest. But notice that flirt is spelled FLIRT, interest, not FLERT, expectations. Show your interest. Do not declare your expectations. I
Oof.
would love to have tea with you. Let me take you out to dinner.
Mm-hmm.
May I invite you to lunch? I'm going to take you out for the best burger you ever had. Right? Interest, not expectations. It's the difference between I'd really love to get to know you and possibly date, and you are perfect to be my spouse. When can we get married? I mean, that's exaggerated, but that's how a lot of people come across when they're
Mm-hmm.
asking for a date. I've literally had people in a first message say, "Hey, you're really attractive. Let me take you out sometime." No,
Right.
no.
There's no interest for me to do those
Or
things.
another one is, "Hey, beautiful, you should really get to know me, or we should really get to know each other." And I'm like, I'm not into people shooting on me. Not my kink. Right? No,
Should is definitely not my kink.
no. So, R, being responsible. And this is challenging when it comes to Neurospicy because we got a lot of trauma around how we use language and how we engage. So if somebody says, hey, that came across kind of not cool, we tend to feel, right? We tend to get reactive in flirting, in connecting, in making those initial connections with someone. We need to take responsibility. Oh, shoot. I'm sorry. Did I make you uncomfortable? That's not what I meant. But first, I want to make sure, are you okay? Is everything okay? Because I don't want to explain myself if you're like feeling some sort of way, right? Take responsibility. Be authentic and honest, but also if you come on hard and somebody pushes back a little bit, accept that and say, oh, sorry, sometimes I'm a little back and forth, didn't mean it. And then, more importantly, take responsibility for being better moving forward. Because a lot of people will take that initial responsibility and then they'll do it over and over and over again. And each time they'll excuse it. Oh, well, I'm, on the spectrum. Yes, yes. And
Mhm.
we want to see effort. Right? We can actually tell when people are putting in effort, right? And then T. T is trust yourself. Flirting really only feels right when you trust yourself and the process. If you're constantly like second guessing your choices, do they like me? Is there spinach between my teeth and a half a million other things? You're going to be missing what? L for listening. You cannot be constantly up in your head going and be paying attention to your flirt partner.
Mhm.
So I used to be pretty shy, which is interesting because whenever I traveled, people would approach me and talk to me. So I talked to all manner of people, but it had very little to do with me. It just had something to do with maybe being born in Iowa and smiling all the time, right? And so people would approach me and they would literally tell me things like on a bus trip to Seattle that they had never told anyone in their life. And sometimes I'm like, I'm not sure I needed to know that, right? But here's the thing. I was shy. I didn't approach people until I decided to change my life after I got diagnosed and to, do what I thought would most potentially successfully get me the life that I wanted. And one of those things was approaching people I thought were interesting instead of just letting people approach me. Hey, whew, there
I
we go.
know. It's scary.
There we go. And the thing that really helped me get over that bit was the realization that shyness is actually, and some people are not going to love this, like RSD, entirely self-centered. If you are in your head worried about all of the things going on, like you are not present with the other. You are not honoring them with your presence. You are not letting them tell you about themselves. You are making up stories in your head about them. And that leads to, and we'll talk about this more when we get into, get bangable, get likable, get lovable, and get sustainable. When you make up stories about someone in your head, you can literally be engaging with those stories of the people and not the people themselves.
And that's so dangerous.
And that is so dangerous. And as soon as I realized that, as soon as I understood that, I immediately started getting out there and getting rejected and doing my best to approach people I thought was interesting. And at the very least, compliment them. I was on Facebook. This is like 2 weeks ago. I'm on Facebook, and you know how they do those like little sponsored or promoted posts or suggested for you. And there was one that was it was like looking for travel buddies, and I love to travel, but let's be honest, I have a ton of buddies to travel with. Like I got my partner, I got my friends, like I got like 15 friends that if I said, hey, I want to do this thing, I could go to 15 different people before I got to a stranger online, right? But there was this scroll stopping set of images of what might be one of the most charismatic looking and beautiful men I have ever seen in my life. And before I even realized it, before a logical thought had time to go through my head, I had joined a travel group. And afterwards, still reeling in the whiplash, I shot him a quick message and said, hey, I am not expecting anything out of this, including a reply. I just thought you should know. I saw this post that you made, and the photos were so attractive and intriguing that I found myself joining a group I don't need before I even realized and came back to myself. That is the power of those images. Bravo. And I said, have an amazing holiday and Happy New Year. That's like, and he did write back. He said something like very sweet and like, oh my gosh, that's so nice or whatever. I did not engage further. I was not expecting it, but I just wanted to reach out and say that. And that is part of, to me, practicing rejection, practicing overcome shyness. I don't expect anything out of him. So if he said, well, that's just dumb, like it doesn't matter, right? If he doesn't respond, it doesn't matter. But I gave him a hit of dopamine. He gave me one back. Strangers in the night, exchanging glances, right? Like it's just done. And that is worth doing, I think. Now, for those of you who might be wanting to like overcome this yourself, just quick tip. Go into Facebook, get into any of those groups that you're in. And when you only make this a pact, you will only comment positively on people's comments. Don't even comment yourself on the full thing, right? Like let other people comment on that. If you're really like, don't love rejection, just comment on people's comments. Wow, all of this. You said it perfectly. Something like that, right? Get used to using those words and speaking them, even through your fingertips, to other people. So, real quick though, it's not just about doing all of these things for conversation, right? Like I've given you, the 5 things you absolutely should have in a first conversation: introduction, interest, respect, potential connection, and invitation, right?
And we have a guide for that.
Download it. The link is in the show notes. It's not just about doing those things, right? It's about being the person who does those things. It's not just about showing interest. It's about being the person who is interested in the other human, not just what they can do for you, but interested in them.
Mm.
Here's the thing though. When we're neurospicy, right? And we've spent years being different. And you go through your grade school years, and you go through your middle school years, and you go through your high school years, and maybe even into college. Maybe your college experience was Revenge of the Nerds. I don't know. Right? All I know is that we build up these walls and distances. And it's hard to be interested in somebody else, truly interested in who they are as a person and not in who you have built them up to be in your head, because we don't have practice doing that so much, right? Sure, with our geeky friends we play D&D with, yes, absolutely. Like we can all day long, but somebody, Cobalt said, but when I'm interested, actually interested, then I melt into awkwardness. But again, the awkwardness is all about our thoughts about that person, not about that person. So we need to practice being interested in them. We need to practice being responsible for our words and our actions and understanding when those make other people feel awkward, and then doing better as best we can. Right? Because we want the best results out of our lives. And if we can be 1% better, that's 1% better than we were yesterday. And if we can't get any better, if we literally keep trying and we can't get any better, okay, now we know. Right? But we're also aware that this can harm others, and we're prepared to take responsibility for that. So it's not just about doing the things. It's not just about the template, although we've given you the template. It's about being the person who does those things and starting with doing the things and practicing them over and over and over again with no expectations, no building up this whole thing. Okay, Dream Boopsy 702 and I've sent off this message, and now they're going to respond with this, and then I'm going to respond with that, and we're going to be, brewing kombucha at home and studying, insect larvae together, and you haven't even hit send on the message yet. Right? This is incredibly common. Knowing that we need to allow people to show up in our lives in order to create a connection. Because if we look at, maybe it's not Dream Boopsy 702, maybe we're looking at, Clara 516, and Clara 516 is really potentially out of our league. And there's somewhere in that profile where they say something like, yeah, and I'm studying etymology. And you're like, say what? And you're like, maybe we do have something in common. But are you going to reach out and allow Clara to actually make that connection? Or are you going to reach out already telling yourself the story, this person is out of my league, they're going to be just like that girl in high school, whatever. Or, Tom Delic, ooh, right? He looks just like that guy who asked me out on a date and then broke my heart and whatever. But this one likes LARPing. Huh. Right? Are we going to allow them to show up as who they are in good and bad ways, right? Because we're trying to make a connection here, but we're also trying to disqualify the people who will not fit. If he shows up in your inbox saying, "Hey, beautiful, thanks so much for writing," and you push back, are you going to allow him to cross that boundary if he doesn't take your pushback well? So,
And we'll get on into all of those things
oh, yes,
in the next 3 episodes. So, next time, y'all, we're going to be talking about the hard stuff, literally.
the hard stuff and the wet stuff.
The hard
And
stuff.
the
Oh my God.
slapping stuff and the petting stuff and the squishing stuff.
And you're not going to get there if you can't get here. So, again, we've got the guide with your first message for paid subscribers, either mine or Nookie's. We're going to have the guide to complimenting.
Mm-hmm.
And then
more in depth than the Cliff's Notes we did here.
And we will be back next time to talk about sex, y'all. It's going to be
bangable.
Amazing. So, if you have questions, especially about this one, please let us know. Give us a call. We have a hotline set up for you. It's 1-402-819-9939. And you can call, leave your questions. We'll get to it before the next section. And we will see what happens. Thank you, my friend. This has been an absolute joy and delight.
Always.
Always. And we will see you all again next time. Have an amazing day. Bye.